My mission is to grow into a leader who strives to invite everyone to join the conversation, help others realize their own value, turn weakness into strength, and facilitate meaningful dialogue through creative outlets. To live out this mission, I led an action research project. As a resident assistant, I chose to work with my residents to do a leadership workshop. To start, we had a dialogue around light and shadow leadership, identity, and how identity plays into leadership. Together, we explored our own identities with an identity ranking activity. On the diagram of an atom, each person placed identities more prevalent in their lives closer to the center of the atom. Next, I asked each person to write down 5 of their own strengths. After they finished, I presented them with art materials and asked them each to create a self-portrait incorporating the 5 strengths they had written down. All of my residents are women, so our conversation about identity often revolved around how gender plays into the practice of leadership. Eleanor Roosevelt was one of the most influential women of the 20th century. During my action research project, I also kept in mind Blanche Wiesen-Cook's book, Eleanor Roosevelt, Volume 2, The Defining Years. Her role as First Lady was revolutionary, and her career defied the traditional woman's role. She has spoken to how identity plays out in leadership, saying, "How men hate women in a position of real power." This was especially prevalent in her time in the White House and is still a very important concept today. In our dialogue about light and shadow leadership, we touched on the idea that different qualities are considered positive for each gender. While confidence may be seen as light leadership in a man, it can be seen as shadow leadership in a woman, even today. As Cook describes, Roosevelt's life was about controversy and compromise, power and action. Compromise and action are 2 qualities of light leadership, yet Roosevelt, as Cook says, was the most controversial First Lady in the U.S. history. She often publicly disagreed with her husband, including disagreeing with a misogynist clause in his 1933 Economy Act, which resulted in the dismissal of federally employed wives. Roosevelt was controversial because she identified differently than many women of her time, and her values differed from the standards set for women during her career. In our discussion, we talked about how each of us has experienced discrimination based on gender and pressures to act in a gender-normative way. In the end, I hoped our project would empower and inspire my residents to focus on their strengths and to think about how their identities affect their everyday lives.